Hey everybody, my name is Jordyn Dees and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about how you can host a poetry slam or poetry cafe event at your school. So I have been on my school's literary magazine, The Echo, for about 2 years, and this year I am the co-editor and I handle print editing for the most part. And The Echo is the school literary magazine, so we publish the writing and art and photography of students around our school. And that's kind of like how we adopt our role in the school. And several years ago, before I was even at Steinbrenner, The Echo started doing something called Poetry Cafe, which is basically an annual or biannual event that we hold in the library, and it allows students to perform their writing or their music for a crowd of their peers, and it's just become a school tradition and an Echo tradition that we really love to carry on. I know a lot of schools don't necessarily host poetry slams ever or know how to, so I just wanted to get into a little bit about how you can do that. So the first thing you're going to want to do is try to gauge school interests. It might seem like students don't care about poetry, but I promise you, you can probably find some students that are really passionate about writing and performing and are looking for a medium to do so. I recommend reaching out to some clubs. In the past, we advertised a lot to the art club and the creative writing club at my school. If you have a writing club or something similar to that, that might be a good place to go to see if students would be interested. Even music clubs can be great because, at least at our poetry slams that we do, we allow musicians to perform or band kids to perform. So going to the band club or the chorus teacher or the orchestra director might be a really good way to find some kids interested in performing music. Next, location, location, location. So school is going to be your absolute best option for location because it'll likely be free or at least very, very cheap. At my school, we always host it in our media center because our media center specialist rocks, and she always does her best to make each poetry cafe better than the last one. So we like to host it in the media center. If that isn't an option for you and you can't really retrofit it to the layout that you need for the performance or for the night, then I would recommend checking out your auditorium and seeing if that's something that you could use for an evening. You could talk to the head of the theater department at your school or the head of the music department and see if the auditorium would be something you guys would be able to use for the night. If school isn't an option, which it might not be, try to find a local cafe or a local theater that would be interested in letting you host your poetry cafe for free or at a discounted rate because you're all students. This is a little bit tougher, but if you're really invested, I would definitely recommend checking it out. Even if they do charge you, it might still be a great option for you. If you do decide to host it at school, you will need to get the okay from the higher-ups. I know that this can be pretty daunting, but just make sure you make a plan on why you want to host this cafe night and try to explain that to them in a way that they will understand. You should definitely emphasize the outlet for creativity that it has. For our poetry cafes, at least, I found that it's been a great way for people that aren't necessarily performers but that are mostly writers to still get their chance in the limelight and perform their work in a way and a space that makes them really comfortable. So I would emphasize that to your administrators and even invite them to join and see what it's all about. Next, you need to decide whether you want your poetry cafe to be a competition night or a simple open mic. A competition would involve handing out trophies at the end and claiming an ultimate winner. This can be great. It adds a layer of competitiveness to the night, and it can also add a lot of tension and excitement for the audience. The one thing that you do need to think about is that you will need to find judges for the night. So these could be English teachers that are open to volunteering their time for a night, or you could even just have students from your publication or the students that helped to plan the event to judge, or you could even reach out into the audience and ask students to judge as long as none of their friends or family members are up on stage performing. Definitely a greater competitive energy, but a few more variables to think about, and it might turn off some people. That's why an open mic night is what we decide to do every time that we host our poetry cafe. So an open mic night is not about judging or scores or competition, it's just about freedom of expression. It's less pressure on the performer, but it's possibly less tension up on stage, so there might be a little bit less excitement, but for us it still works really well and people are just excited to get their art out there. Or you could decide to combine the two. The first half of the night could be purely just open mic and people performing for fun, and the second half could be people that are interested in performing for the great prize. That could be a trophy or a cash prize or whatever you and your team decide on. This is a kind of nice in-between idea that attracts both the chill crowd and the competitive crowd. The biggest part of hosting any kind of event like this is advertising. Now, the Echo, my school's literary magazine, does a lot with advertising year-round, but particularly when selling our magazines and when hosting our Poetry Cafe nights. We focus a lot on video ads, which can be a really, really fun way to get people's attention. Definitely recommend doing some sort of skit for your ad that's exciting but still informative, but ultimately how you choose to advertise is up to you. You might want to also consider putting posters around school, in the cafeteria, in the hallways, and if the individual teachers are okay with it, we often hang them in English teachers' classrooms because that's where a lot of our writers like to live. Any art teachers' classrooms, photography teachers' classrooms, any kind of creative teachers' classrooms, or just any classroom in general, because artists are all around the school. Oh, and while you're advertising to English teachers, you can also ask them if they would be willing to give extra credit to students that are attending or performing at the event. Usually that helps us draw in a lot more people. Sure, you get a couple people that don't really care about poetry or are just there to get the A in English, but I find that it still does attract a sizable crowd of people that might not have come otherwise but end up having a really, really great time. I recommend contacting your school's broadcast team or morning show and seeing if they would be okay with airing the video ad that you created. It's great to share your video ads on your publication social media, but if it has a relatively small following and you want to get that message out to the entire school, the morning show is your best bet. When you're thinking about a theme, there are a few things that you should consider. First of all, it can be a great way to set a beautiful setting and atmosphere for your cafe night. It can just get everybody in a certain mindset that you're looking for, and it can just create a really great vibe. However, if the theme is extending towards the kind of art and writing that you're willing to put on stage, that can limit your performers. If people aren't interested in writing about the topic that you propose, then they might be turned off from performing or even attending your event. What the Echo does in particular is we usually create some sort of theme for the night that creates the energy in the room, but the writing and the art is totally unrelated to the theme. It can be absolutely anything that the person wants to perform. In past years, one of our literary magazines for that year was kind of a cityscape theme, and we got a real jazz vibe, so that's kind of what we went with for our Poetry Cafe event that semester. The tables were all set up with tablecloths and little lights, and we had servers coming around and taking orders from people of just like snacks that they wanted at the event, and that really helped to create a certain energy in the room. But we didn't necessarily emphasize that pieces needed to be about that. It was just a nice way to set the stage without limiting our performers too much. Now for the part that everybody's excited for, making money. So first off, you probably won't make as much money as you initially assume going into a cafe night. The amount of money that we make can vary depending on the crowd turnout. We could make as much as $300, but we could also make as little as $100. It just depends. I wouldn't go into it searching purely for money, but it can be a nice backup, a nice side effect of hosting a poetry night. So you could consider charging entry to get into the performance. That's what a lot of theater productions or music productions often do, but if your event is fairly new to the school, you might not be able to charge at the door. You could also think about charging for parents, but making admission free for students and kids. The Echo doesn't personally charge for entry just because we want to get as many bodies in the door as possible, but it is an option for you. If you don't want to charge for entry, there are still plenty of stuff that you can sell while at the event. We sell things like water, tea, coffee, soda, chips, candy, desserts, really anything that you can think of making. We usually just have a table, and it's $1 for absolutely everything. If you go to Sam's Club or Costco or another like big store, you can buy like a tub of like 50 bags of chips for like $10, and selling them for $1 a piece definitely turns a profit. You can also sell your creations. As I mentioned, the Echo is a literary magazine, so we publish the art and writing of students around the school. We sell our magazines for about $5 each, so that's another way you can make a little bit of extra money while promoting yourself. Raffle baskets are also a great way to fundraise a little bit. What we usually do is we have members of the publication offer to bring some stuff in to create several different raffle baskets. So one raffle basket idea might be a rainy Sunday afternoon, so that's just filled with like fuzzy socks and like maybe a couple books, some packets of tea, and just stuff like that. Or you could have an athlete's dream raffle basket that's filled with like Nike socks and I don't know, whatever athletes like to use. Those are just a couple options that you could use to create raffle baskets. We usually sell raffle tickets for like $1 or 50 cents. Sometimes people will buy like 3 or 4 raffle tickets, and then at the end of the night we announce the numbers for each basket, and one lucky person gets to take each basket home. So that's also a great way to raise some money, as long as you have access to items to put into the baskets. I would also focus on encouraging many different art forms to perform at your event. The name Poetry Slam might be deceiving if that's the title that you go with. We call our event Scribble and Scratch. That's actually a new name, and we picked it because we didn't want to just focus on having a poetry cafe. We wanted people to understand that we want many different art forms. So what we planned for our annual event, which was unfortunately canceled due to the pandemic, was having an art gallery for people to look at. So before, during the intermission, or after the event, people would be able to walk around the media center and look at the art created by Steinbrenner students. So that encouraged photographers, hand-drawn illustrations, digital artists to come to the event as well and showcase their work, because that gives some recognition to your school's artists, while also getting more people in the door, like parents of those artists or just the artists themselves. Beyond just poetry or art, you should also encourage musicians to come to your event. So we often have guitarists or singers perform, usually at least 3 or 4 every night, and it is a real hit with the crowd. Poetry is great, but the little musical interludes are really, really special and create a really nice energy for the group. Speaking of energy, do your best to make it a fun experience for all. Whether you were behind planning the event or you're just hoping that your audience has a good time, try to keep it as low pressure as possible, especially for the first event. Feel it out, see how it goes, see what changes you want to make in following semesters or in following years. Definitely try to create an atmospheric experience for your crowd. Feel free to do some more research into how to create a good energy in your poetry slam. Something that we always emphasize is audience feedback during a piece. Poetry slams get a bad rap for being really hippie, but in a way it is kind of a chill environment. Like I said, we focus on audience feedback, so if someone is performing and they say something very impactful to you or that means something, we usually like to encourage the audience to give a couple snaps to the people, or can't really hear it, but a couple stomps are also go a long way. So just stuff like that that can create a more inviting experience, not just for performances, but for audience members. And that kind of brings me to my last point about what I love so much about our poetry evenings and what was going to be our first ever Scribble and Scratch. Poetry slams have been one of my best experiences in high school, and as a high school senior, I've had quite a few. I rarely encounter such a welcoming and beautiful environment that's purely about sharing your art and speaking your truth. Going to events like the Echo's Poetry Cafe has made me a much more confident performer and a more confident poet as well. I never thought I was the kind of person that could get on stage and spew my guts, but Poetry Cafe created a really safe and welcoming environment to do so in. And so I am forever grateful to the Echo and our advisor Eric Bana for creating that experience, and I'm hoping that any of you that are interested are able to do that as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to DM me on Instagram or reach out to us on our social media, Steinbrenner Echo, and we hope to hear from you. And if you end up hosting an event, please let us know, reach out, we'd love to hear about it. I hope you guys learned a little bit more about how you can put on a poetry event for your school, and I wish you the best of luck in doing so. Bye!